It's been many decades since Jeep last offered a Wagoneer, but now the nameplate is back as a flagship full-size SUV. Jeep is taking a two-pronged approach to this model. There's going to be a regular Wagoneer and a Grand Wagoneer. Now, the former is going to be going up against things like the GMC Yukon, targeting the heart of the full-size market, whereas this, what we have right here, the Grand Wagoneer, is definitely targeted at the Cadillac Escalade. Now, we have a Series 2 model. It goes up to Series 3, and the Grand Wagoneer is going to have some special touches. We have this nice metal finish up here. They all say Wagoneer on it, but the Grand Wagoneer has a little bit of a different grille up here. It is a very, very intimidating looking vehicle. They definitely tried to style this to look like the old Wagoneer with a very slab-sided, big windows, everything like that. We've got 22-inch wheels. I believe 20s are the standard on the Grand Wagoneer. The regular Wagoneer you can actually get with an off-road package that gets you smaller 18-inch wheels. Here's the Grand Wagoneer badge. This would just say Wagoneer if you had that one, and you do get a little American flag emblem right here. Now, I should mention that the Wagoneer and Grand Wagoneer are actually the same size. So this is not a Tahoe Suburban situation. They are actually the same vehicle. I believe the wheelbase is 123 inches long, so it is a little bit bigger than something like a Tahoe or a regular Escalade, but it is a little bit smaller in wheelbase compared to an Escalade ESV or a Suburban. Now, at the back, this is a little bit controversial thing here. We have this very big rear window, very reminiscent of the old Wagoneer. We have Grand Wagoneer written very big across here with a lot of chrome elements right here. I wouldn't say that this is the prettiest vehicle on the market, but again, with these big full-size SUVs, it's kind of hard to make them look very sleek and sexy. So I think this at least looks pretty intimidating. It looks pretty mean, and I do think it captures that luxury market very well. All right, so let's start off by checking out the front row. It's very luxurious in the Grand Wagoneer. We've got our power retractable running board that folds out as you open up the door. We've got this lovely blue interior here that I absolutely adore with these nice metal aluminum finishes here, making this a very premium feeling cabin. We can go ahead and use our start-stop button, which is really nice. It has like its own capsule. You see Grand Wagoneer Macintosh projected up here. We've got tons and tons of screen real estate here. I believe it's up to 75 inches total here in the Grand Wagoneer. I think it's like 50 up here just in the front. And we're going to go over what all of that does. We've got our seat adjustment here on the door like a Mercedes. Tons of adjustment, including massage function. It is a really nice massage too, in case you were wondering. We've got a two-spoke steering wheel here, you know, reminiscent of the old Wagoneer that had a two-spoke steering wheel back in the 80s, 90s, and even the 70s. We've got this big, I think it's 10.25 inch screen here. You can do a lot to customize this. You can have it show your fuel economy, your map, all things like that, which is really cool. You have good buttons right here. The only thing missing, I don't see a voice command button, although I think that this phone call button might double as that now that I'm seeing it. Over here on the Grand Wagoneer, we have a larger touchscreen infotainment system. This is 12 inches here. This is Jeep's Uconnect 5 infotainment system. So you can do wireless Android Auto, wireless CarPlay. You can connect two Bluetooth devices, which is great. We've got these touch capacitive buttons here for our heated seats and ventilated seats. So as you can see, there are different zones. You can have it do just your back, just your butt, or both, which is quite nice as well. Heated steering wheel, of course. Now, because we have a Series 2 Grand Wagoneer, we also have a screen down here. This is going to handle all of your climate controls, your seat massage functions, all of that, which is really cool. The regular Wagoneer just has regular buttons down here. We have some of our drive controls down here. We've got our controls here for auto, snow, rut, sand, all of that for the four-wheel drive system. There's this cool button right here where if you push that, it's going to lift up the screen, and that's where your wireless charger and all of your USB ports are, which is quite nice. Backward from here, we've got this nice cup holder area with a key fob slot and a nice slot for your phone as well. This is quite nice, the armrest here. You've got like a little storage cubby here, or you can open up the whole thing, and look at that. We've got a refrigerator in there. Again, this thing is extremely luxurious, just a very luxurious model overall. Now, the coolest feature we have is over here. We've got another screen, just so many screens over here. Now, once you turn this on, Your passenger can use the navigation, different features like that. They can even watch TV, YouTube, all of that stuff off the Amazon Fire TV. We'll talk a little bit more about that when we get into the back seat. Next, we're gonna move on into the back seat, which again is super luxurious. We've got the 7-seat layout here, but you can also get the Grand Wagoneer as an 8-seater. These seats are highly adjustable, not powered though. We do have the infotainment system here, which is awesome. I actually highly recommend this. I think this is the best rear seat entertainment system you're gonna find in any car, because look, it has Fire TV, which means you can watch YouTube, Netflix, Hulu right on the car's built-in connection, and that's something you just really can't do in any other vehicles right now. We've got this big display here for all of our inputs. You can put in headphones, you can put in your USBs, things like that. We have charging ports. You have another screen here in the center console. All this really does is your climate, so there's really not that much of a reason to have here. I think Jeep just wanted to have the most screen space out of anybody. You do have another screen there, and I like how this has like a wallpaper when you're not using it, which is quite cool. We have a center console here. Again, this wouldn't be here if you had the 8-seat design, and it's very similar to the one up front. You have this little cubby area here. This is your remote. This is familiar to anybody who has an Amazon Fire TV. It's pretty much the same remote. And then if you pull this back, your kids are going to have a ton of storage space back here. Now let's check out the third row. Before we do, we've got our sunshades back here, which is a nice luxurious feature that your kids will enjoy. We've got our Macintosh audio system. It's 19 speakers. Bass, the optional one, is 23 speakers, and it sounds phenomenal. One of the best sound systems I think I've heard. Your kids are gonna love that. Very easy to get into the third row. You just push this button, you see you have a very wide access point right here. And the seats back here are enormous. You do get 3 of them back here, enough space for lots of people. I'm gonna go ahead and pull the seat back. As you can see, my legs, my knees are not even close to touching, which is pretty great. We do have some adjustment here. You can slide and recline these seats via power. And I do have USBs and my own air vents back here. I even have a manual sunroof, so your kids will enjoy their own sunroof back here. And now let's check out the trunk space, which is pretty similar on both the Grand Wagoneer and Wagoneer models, although there are some differences that we are going to talk about. So here in the third row, you get 27.4 cubic feet, which I believe Jeep is saying is best in class. It is more than what you're gonna get in like a Cadillac Escalade. And as you can see here, you have your suitcase here and plenty of room for more stuff as well. Now, here are the controls to lower the seats very easily. So if I just push these buttons, they are one-touch buttons. So as you can see, my hand is not on it anymore, and the seats are gonna fold down automatically. They're not quite as fast as what you get in the Escalade, but I like that they are one-touch buttons. Now, with the second row folded, you're gonna get 70.8 cubic feet in the Wagoneer and 70.9 cubic feet, just a little bit more here in the Grand Wagoneer. Now, the second row seats are the same. You just one-touch push these buttons and they will drop the seats down. They are power down, but they are not power up. That's exactly the same as the GM vehicles like the Yukon Denali and the Cadillac Escalade. Now, Jeep says that if you get the Wagoneer, you're going to get 116.7 cubic feet, which is best in class. It's a lot more than what you'll get in a regular wheelbase Escalade, not quite as much as an Escalade ESV. Now, the Grand Wagoneer has much less, only 94.2 cubic feet, and they say that is because of all of the sunroofs here. You have the one in the back and the one in the front, and I believe that center console is going to eat up some of your space as well. But again, a very, very spacious SUV. Now, before we get either the Wagoneer or Grand Wagoneer out on the road, I just wanted to give you a quick walk around and in-depth tour of the regular Wagoneer since we just checked out the Grand. This is a Series 2. The Series 1 is later availability. As you can see, a much more simple but still very elegant front end with the big Wagoneer written across. I really love this red. I think this is my favorite of the colors that we've seen here. And as I mentioned in the first part of the video, you can get the regular Wagoneer with 18-inch wheels as part of an off-road package. Now, this is a very small wheel, you know, for a vehicle this big, but that's going going to help you out a lot off-road. You won't have to worry about taking a big, nice chunk out of those smaller wheels. Now, as you can see here, we have regular Wagoneer written on the side here with the American flag, which is backwards if you come over here on the passenger side. That's the same for the Grand Wagoneer. I think that's a little bit of an interesting touch. Now, as you can see, we have a little bit of a more simple interior. I do like this gray leather here. I think this is a really gorgeous way to have it, and it has this nice like gray wood as well. The screen is a little bit smaller, so as you can see, there's more of a bezel here on this infotainment system than on the Grand Wagoneer. And down here below that screen, instead of another touchscreen, you just have a regular binnacle that you can push open to reveal your storage area. The steering wheel is not quite as nice. The buttons are a little bit different here. They're more of like a plastic finish than the glossy finish, but still very nice as well. We've got our rotating shift knob as well. And everything here is pretty similar as well, except we don't have our nice refrigerator in there. Still have the big sunroofs here. We've got the nice Alpine system here instead of the Macintosh. Still a very good audio system, but again, that Macintosh, you really want to get that. It is really nice. This is what an 8-seat layout is going to look like. So instead of that middle seat, we now just have a bench here with some cup holders and all of your climate controls. Heated seats are going to be right here. No ventilated seats here on the regular Wagoneer. And the third row is pretty much going to be the same as well. And we're going to close the door here. We have our fixed running boards, not powered here on this Wagoneer model. And as you can see, the rear end is pretty similar as well. So this is just a little bit more of a simple experience. If you were looking at something, say a GMC Yukon, that's what this is targeting, whereas the Grand Wagoneer is much more targeted at Escalade and Navigator. All right, so now that we've checked out the interiors and exteriors of the Wagoneer and Grand Wagoneer, let's go ahead and get the Wagoneer out on the road first. And we're going to start by talking about the engine. There's only one available on the standard Wagoneer, and it's a 5.7 liter Hemi V8 engine producing 392 horsepower and 404 pound-feet of torque. Those are really good numbers. That's a lot more than what you're going to get in the base GM full-size vehicles like the Tahoe and Yukon, but it's not quite as much as you're going to get out of the 6.2 liter V8 that you get in the Escalade or some trims of the Yukon and Tahoe. But the horsepower is good here, and the best thing about this is that you're going to get Jeep's 48 volt mild hybrid system. They call it e-torque. Basically what that's going to do is it's going to add just a little bit of horsepower and a lot of torque upon acceleration using a 48 volt mild hybrid generator. And then when you come to a complete stop in this vehicle, it's going to be really smooth. It's going to kick the engine back on very smoothly. I do think that out of the two vehicles, this actually has a slightly smoother start-stop because of that e-torque system, but the 6.4 is not bad either. Now, the fuel economy is not great on either of the Wagoneer or Grand Wagoneer. You shouldn't expect that with a vehicle of this size. You're going to get 13 miles per gallon city, 18 on the highway, and 15 combined. That's with the four-wheel drive version of this regular Wagoneer, and that's, if you get four-wheel drive, you can get a little bit better if you get a rear-wheel drive version of the Wagoneer. All Grand Wagoneers, at least at launch, are going to be four-wheel drive. Now, speaking of four-wheel drive, there are a bunch of different systems for you to choose from. There are 3 4x4 systems, and it really just depends on how much off-roading you're going to do. The Quadra Track 1 system is just a basic all-wheel drive system. There's no modes to put in. It's just in all-wheel drive all the time, single drive line. Now, the Quadra Track 2 is going to be a little bit more advanced with selectable all-wheel drive. And then there's a Quadra Drive 2. It's a little confusing. Quadra Track 1, Quadra Track 2, and Quadra Drive 2. The most rugged version is going to be the Quadra Drive 2. That gets you a low range and a limited slip differential. We're going to try that out a little bit off-road, off camera, although I suspect that this vehicle is not going to be doing a whole lot of off-roading with most customers, in the same way that a Tahoe or an Escalade or a Yukon are not either. Now, there are different suspension options you can get here on this Wagoneer model. You can either have a fixed suspension that is self-leveling in the rear, or you can have the Quadra Airlift suspension, which is what we have. Now, that can adjust the suspension quite a lot. You can have up to 10 inches of ground clearance here on this model. It's the one I'm driving right now, and it's the same one that I drove in the Grand Wagoneer. I really like it. It supplies a really supple ride. And what I want to tell you after driving both, and we'll hop back in the Grand Wagoneer a little later, is that I don't think that you lose much if you're only getting the Wagoneer. Yes, the interior isn't as nice, but in terms of the drive, it really does feel very similar. The steering has different ratios, so it gets heavier at high speeds, lighter at low speeds. So it is very nice, and it makes this car feel a little bit smaller than it really is. The ride is gorgeous with this air suspension, just a very, very soft, supple ride. That bumps do not upset it very much. The one thing I'll say is this 5.7 liter V8, we're going to go ahead and floor it. Doesn't sound as good as the 6.4. The 6.4 has a really, really nice grunt to it, and it definitely doesn't feel as quick, but it's definitely quicker than the base General Motors options. So I really do like the Wagoneer, but the biggest difference between the two is going to be under the hood. So let's go ahead and hop in the Grand Wagoneer. All right, so now we've hopped out of the regular Wagoneer to see what the Grand Wagoneer is all about. And as I mentioned, with the Grand, you do get a larger V8 engine. This is the only engine option for now. It's a 6.4 liter Hemi V8. That is a big boy motor. It's the same one you can get in a ton of other Stellantis vehicles, the Dodge Durango SRT, the Jeep Grand Cherokee SRT8, things like that. It's that motor. It's tuned in this application to produce 471 horsepower, which is great, and 455 pound-feet of torque. Now, those are really good horsepower numbers. That's more than what you're going to get in the Lincoln Navigator with its twin turbocharged V6, and it's more than what you're going to get in the Cadillac Escalade with its 6.2 liter V8. Now, this car also has cylinder deactivation, same as it does in a lot of other applications of this 6.4 liter Hemi, saving you just a little bit on fuel. Let's see how it accelerates here. It sounds like a 6.4 liter Hemi, that's for sure. It sounds really good. Very smooth acceleration. I forgot to mention that both the Wagoneer and Grand Wagoneer have 8-speed automatics, really good ones at that. Super smooth shifts, very buttery. And I mentioned that this has cylinder deactivation, so when you aren't accelerating like I just did, it will shut down to run on 4 cylinders, although unfortunately that doesn't do much to save you fuel economy. With 4-wheel drive, you're going to be getting 15 in the city, 20 on the highway, and 17 combined. So interestingly enough, that is actually a little bit better than what you are going to get on the smaller 5.7 liter engine with the e-torque. So I guess the cylinder deactivation is doing its job, considering that 4-wheel drive to 4-wheel drive, you are going to be getting about 1 to 2 mpg better here on this Grand Wagoneer. So something to consider, but both are going to be very expensive in the long run for you to fill up. But again, so is something like a Cadillac Escalade or a Ford Expedition or a Lincoln Navigator. But I will say the GMs do offer that diesel engine, so that is your fuel economy option right there. So now with the extra power, I really do feel that the Grand Wagoneer has more get up and go. It just downshifted a little bit, but still stayed below 3,000 RPM to give me some little burst of acceleration right there. With the regular Wagoneer, you do have to drop a few more gears, and you really do have to get it into the 3,000 or 4,000 RPM range for it to give you that really nice acceleration. It's a lot more effortless here on the Grand Wagoneer, and definitely more effortless even than the Cadillac Escalade with its 6.2 liter engine. So in terms of just raw power, Jeep kind of nailed the game here. This is a really nice driving experience. And as we mentioned with the regular Wagoneer, it is super comfortable in here. The suspension is fantastic. I love this Quadralift air ride suspension. It is very soft, very supple, good body control, but again, this is a huge vehicle. So we were driving this through New York City earlier, taking some roundabouts on the parkways there, and I didn't want to push this vehicle too hard. It does have a sport mode that you can engage. The Wagoneer had it too. It doesn't do too much. It's going to lower the air suspension a little bit, give you a little bit of a heavier steering function, although I think the steering is really nice. I do have a decent amount of feedback to know what the front end is doing, and I do like how it is variable, so it feels a little bit tighter on the highway, so you don't have to give as much movement, and then at slow speeds when you're doing maneuvering, the steering wheel becomes very light and very easy to negotiate. Now, this engine in the Grand Wagoneer does not have the 48-volt mild hybrid system. It's just a normal 6.4-liter V8 engine, but I didn't find the start-stop to be very intrusive on this car. And I think that Jeep is going to be doing 4xe plug-in hybrid versions, hopefully of both of these models, as Jeep has announced that electrification will be a big part of its future moving forward. So we'll wait and see what engines are going to come. Maybe they'll even do a Hellcat-powered version. I think that would be really cool. But as it sits, I would say most people are going to be happy with the regular Wagoneer. I think everybody's going to be happy with this Grand Wagoneer, but I don't think that you're going to miss out and really feel like you should have bought the Grand Wagoneer if you can only afford the Wagoneer. I think both are excellent. So that was the 2022 Jeep Wagoneer and Grand Wagoneer. Now, if you want the regular Wagoneer, which is what you see right here, pricing for the Series 1, which is a late availability model, starts at just under $58,000. And the Series 3, the nicest one, is just under $76,000. Now, the Grand Wagoneer is significantly more expensive. The base Series 1 Grand Wagoneer starts at $86,995, so just under 87 grand, and goes all the way up to just under $104,000 for the Series 3, and that is not even including all of the options. So again, these are pretty expensive. They go right toe-to-toe with the Lincoln Navigator and the Cadillac Escalade on the high end. So what do I think of the Wagoneer and Grand Wagoneer? I think it's really cool that Jeep has decided to enter this market. It's a market that I think Jeep has been ripe for many different years, and they have done it very properly. These cars drive really well. They're very comfortable. They have extremely well appointed interiors, and I do think they drive a little nicer than the GM equivalents and pretty similar to the Ford equivalents, but in a very Stellantis Jeep style. So if you are looking at one of these full-sized SUVs, the Wagoneer is the new hotness and definitely something that you should be considering.